You live, sweetheart.
Hi, everybody. Good night. My name is Susan Omega, and I'm currently joined with Mr. Lennox Lamb. We are going to be having Mr. Jeremy Enriquez on tonight. We are waiting for Mr. Koi to connect to the live stream. Before we get started tonight, we wanted to send some prayers and positive vibes to one of our fellow comrade, Mr. G. Michael, who is having surgery and is going to be taking some time to rest and recoup. And we are definitely with him mentally and spiritually. And we would like for you guys to just send him some positive vibe and let him know that the work that he does is important and we do miss him, especially like a night like tonight where he's usually the host and he makes all the stuff possible for us to facilitate this show. Mr. Lennox, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? Let the people know a little bit about you, where you're from, and yeah, let us know a little bit more about you.
But I think I'm getting myself back there now.
Oh, there you go, Mr. Coy. Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I think I got it. Aye, aye, aye.
Well,
Okay, Joe, you live, Joe, you live.
Yeah, I am.
Hi, Mr. Coy. We just gave out a shout out for Mr. G. Michael and his surgery, and just basically ask the general public to pray and send him some healing vibes and energy, and let him know that we do miss him, especially a night like tonight where he is your co-comrade, and he also helps to facilitate these conversations nicely. And so we just did that, and Mr. Lennox was about to just introduce himself to the audience.
Well, I know it was. I'm glad to hear that he's in the good condition as you are reporting, and it is an honor for me to try to fit in the big shoe of G Mike. He's a bit of a colorful character, eh? But at the same time, since I've been asked to not just host but to chair the show in his place, I would like to firstly say a healthy good night to all the viewers and listeners of See Smoke to this another episode, the Friday night episode of See Smoke. I would say that you read between the lines, and I sense that it has been reaching out quite across the region. And no doubt we have in fact been informing the listeners and viewers right across the spectrum, from the performing arts to sports, to from the boardrooms, I would say, of businesses right up to the political corridors of power. So I would say indeed that I would ask the viewers and listeners to just remove the smoke from their eyes and read between the lines. I understand we were to have tonight a guest in the name of Mr. Jeremy
Enriquez.
Enriquez, yes. Will he be coming on?
Yes. I think we're waiting for him to join.
All right, because I wanted to introduce him, no doubt. But in the meantime, if you would like me to proceed, I would just like to introduce then Mr. Lennox Lamb, who I have known for many years. And yes, he's also a scholar in political science, but he claims that he would prefer to call himself political, meaning a person who is more in the practical side of politics. But Lennox bring to this forum, no doubt, I would say a perspective that is outside the tradition of the North American perspective, simply because he had his academic background more in the South American environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I have some wonderful discussions with him in terms of politics and way of life in general, because he has the benefit of both worlds. He resides right now in St. Louis, so he has the benefit of North American perspective, but with a background coming out of the sub-region. So welcome to the show, Lennox, and we hope indeed that you will make your contribution in terms of your political experience and your general experience, I must say.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you guys for having me here, and I hope I can um, add some insight to the discussions and try to push forward um, this important time. The Prime Minister have announced elections, and that's always a wonderful time to talk politics, to talk about politics. So I'm
Could you
hopefully.
just raise your, could you just raise your,
You're not hearing me?
yeah, I'm hearing you better now.
I'm hearing better. Yeah. I'm hoping that I can add to the discussion, especially now that the Prime Minister has called election. I think I like to say this is my time where I get to talk and engage in political discussions in a heartful way. So hopefully I can assist.
Well, while we are awaiting Mr. Jeremy, perhaps I can introduce the topic I think that he will be bringing to the forum here tonight. And it is no doubt a very sensitive topic. It's very constitutional, and I think it is very provocative politically, because I think he's leading the charge in a triumvirate to bring possible litigation, or it is already before the court with the attempt to have the redistricting, the rebalancing of the 31 divisions as is required by the Constitution. And I think they were in the forefront too of insisting that this be done before the next elections. Well, the election has been set for March the 12th, and we look forward to indeed hear what is the update with the case before the court. I am not sure. I think they had made an attempt to seek an injunction to perhaps put a hold on the election. I'm not sure what is the outcome, but evidently it has not probably been successful because the election is still on course for March the 12th. But for those of us who are familiar with the Constitution, I think we are all aware that the Section 19 in particular that speaks of the divisions that the Election and Boundaries Commission has the responsibility of making a determination in the country as to how many divisions there are to be. They bring proposal, of course, to the National Assembly. But not only how many divisions there are to be, but there is a principle that is enshrined in the Constitution to ensure that the divisions are more or less equal in numbers. And it will be interesting to hear the whole benefit and the principle that underpins this more or less equal numbers but by divisions. And the case that Mr. Jeremy and his team is bringing, why it's so important that it must be done before the next election. Why is it important in the first place? How does it enhance our democracy, and how does it enhance the representation of the People's Act? So I think we look forward to hear from Jeremy his perspective. And I think this is where you would come in, Lennox, because as a political yourself, you are well familiar with that side of the Constitution, because it's the section that actually gives power, in a sense, to the defense of the fundamental rights of the Constitution, because it has to do with the elections of the era representative, which is where the political process begins now, in the separation of powers between the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. So maybe you can, while we are waiting for Jeremy, maybe you can give us your views, Lennox, in that area of the Constitution.
Well, Joe, first off, I was lucky. This would have been when this process started and they had hired the consultant to do the analysis of the disparity within the voters' list and beliefs. I was actually invited by the then attorneys who are working on this case, Arthur Saldiva, and I think it was Michelle Trapp. And I want to forget his name, his firm is on Corner Drive. So I had a good look at the document that the British guy did, which basically looked at the breakdown between the constituency, and he produced the findings that I think at that time it would have been the Belize Peace Movement who had filed the case, no?
Yes.
I found it a little bit disheartening that the disparity was so high in certain constituency. And I felt that we shouldn't have allowed it to take place as a society for so long. And so I was happy at the time when the decision was made to challenge it and to challenge elections and boundaries. And I was hoping that it would have been able to be tabled and finished before the next election, no? But
Yes.
but let's stay there. Let's stay there until the gentleman comes on. What people have to understand about what we're dealing with is what you're trying to do is try to get the best possible representation for all citizens. And more so than to look at it from a point whereby you want all the constituencies to be equal, I believe the spirit of it is to give every single voter access or as much access to their representative as possible. I think where we get a little bit confused about the issue is that we want all the constituencies to look alike. I think what is more important is for us to ensure that each citizen voice is heard, has access to his representative in a meaningful way. And the importance of this when you look at a small society like Belize that is constantly growing, Joe, it will be a situation whereby in the next 50, 60 years, the way the population is moving, we might as well have representatives who are representing 20, 30,000 people. And that reduces the impact that an individual voter has on reaching to their representatives.
Well, let me be a devil's advocate while we are waiting for the main guest. Now, let's suppose that your area representative is there indeed to go to the parliament and to make laws that will enhance your rights under the Constitution. That is what I think is the primary purpose. But if you ask yourself, if you are in a constituency of 2,000 voters and you are in a constituency of 8,000, does it anyway diminish your freedom of speech or your freedom of association or any other fundamental rights in the Constitution? I'm just being a devil's advocate to try to understand what was the real intent behind the Constitution for equal numbers in constituencies. What is your view on that? Are you hearing me?
I am hearing you, Joe, and I'm laughing. Before we look at that, what you want to always appreciate, Joe, is that we are accustomed as a people to touch, reach, and have access to our representatives. So, although the Constitution did envision us to keep our rights, we still want to talk to our representatives, hold his hand, touch his hand. And there will be a time when that will be much more difficult. There'll be a time when we'll have to be forced to write a letter and find other ways to get the direct access that we want to the representatives. So I don't think what we're looking at right now is an infringement or a reduction in your rights. I think what people are trying to do is to hold on to that access that they have to the representative, if that is a fair way to look at it?
If we were to put the shoe on the other foot, let's say you're an area representative and you're all getting the same pay, of course. All area representatives get the same pay.
Mm-hmm.
But here you are having to manage 8,000 area representatives, while your colleague across the river or wherever he is only managing 2,000. Don't you think it somewhat would be unfair for you as a area rep to be getting the same pay, getting the same allowances, getting the same amount of resources to manage your constituency for the benefit of your voters? Don't you think it's a bit unfair to you to having to be given the same amount of resources? So I'm putting it not from the voter perspective, but from the area representative perspective. Would it be unfair for you to be given the same resources, which is in fact being done? The person in the smaller division of the 2,000, the area rep, gets the same amount for his office, for his salary. Everything is the same. So I would say that the inequity, as I see it, begins with indeed the area representative. But do you hear the area representative clamoring for redistricting? Do you hear the voters clamoring for redistricting? So I think it would be interesting to ask ourselves, well, there may be benefits, no doubt. If you happen to be in a group where you are in a group of 2,000 and you are in a group of the 8,000 being represented by one person, I would say, no, bringing it from the voter perspective, you would have preferred to be in a smaller group. And bringing it from the area representative perspective, it's unfair for him to be given the same amount of resources, but to manage far more voters. So I think these are the areas that we may need to try to focus on to get a feel for what was it that the Constitution really had in mind. If you read the section in the Constitution, it seems to me that it didn't bring out in any specific way what was its intent. He just mentioned what he wanted done, and he leave it us to us, and that is why I find the ambiguity in the Constitution. But here again, you as the political scholar and of course the practitioner. I am not the political scholar, but I am a practitioner. I have been in the political arena myself for over 30 years. So I had felt the brunt of it, no doubt, as when we have these differences. But can you add anything more as to why is it that you believe that we should in fact make every effort to enforce that constitution before an election, because the election evidently with not having a balance in the divisional constituencies that would interfere with our democracy and with the voters' rights? I think we have lost. Oh,
I'm here, Mr. Clay. We're trying to get Mr. Jeremy logged in.
okay, fine, because I think we lost Snow.
Lennox, but I think he should be coming back on momentarily.
Okay, I hope it's not the weather up there in the States affecting us down here.
I hope not. I hope not.
Because first it was myself not being able to get it. Anyhow, let's move on.
Yeah.
Can you have some views on it? Are you waiting? Oh, you're trying to get Mr. Jeremy.
Mr. Jeremy, right.
Yeah, because he's in fact the main.
And then I think they are having an emergency in studio as well.
Okay.
And so who usually the behind the scenes, clicking or letting us in and out is not there right now. I definitely heard your question just now, and I would want to add that it's definitely talks about voter suppression, right? Whenever you have these election happening so rush and there's not a redistricting happen, it cause for an impact of voter suppression, and the concentration of the power within the rural area is not equally distributed as well. That I think what Mr. Lennox was talking about that really happens when an election is called without redistricting properly being done beforehand. We would really hope to get Mr. Jeremy on, because I think the people really wants to hear from him directly too. And I'm trying to see if I can text in the background. Is Mr. Lennox now? Yeah.
Oh, we're still not getting into now.
Yeah, I just text CY.
Well, I think Marcus Aurelius had it right. Never let the obstacle be the obstruction, let it be the way forward.
Let it be the way forward. Yes, yes.
The obstacle must be the pathway.
It is. It is. And you know what? Our people are so resilient too that it's become a survival skill, and that's what we've been doing for years. And I'm not saying that's the way we should continue forward, but it definitely helps in little scenarios like this where we're having technical issues. And
yeah, we'll pull through.
Yeah.
We'll still get the substance of what we want to discuss.
We do.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think it's extremely important. It's a really not just sensitive, but a really important matter for our democracy. When we
It
are
is.
and any matters with the Constitution, that's where I would say the cornerstone is not foundational cornerstone of our democracy.
And I think that the what's going to really help us too is us continuing with our grassroots organizing and podcasting and getting information out to people, and us being regular relatable people. And the good thing is that we are actually really and truly related to a lot of these people who currently need to hear this information. So they know that it's coming from a place of love and wanting them to really have a input on what's happening with politics. And a lot of our people doesn't like to get political, but our daily life is politics. And I think us being able to talk and let them know, like, hey, this is what's happening and this is how the best we can explain it, and I think really does help. Reply here.
Well, I think it's the reality of the world today that those who are indifferent to public matters will pay the price of evil men ruling now.
Yeah.
So it's important that we become engaged. We are social beings, and we don't have any alternative to what we refer to today as us when we graduated from the state of nature to a state of a society. The intent was clearly to expand and to be more protective of our rights.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to remain engaged.
We do.
So the practicing of active citizenship is very important. And I think this is what C-SPOC has done. I think sometimes we need to put a lot of emphasis in what C-SPOC has contributed when it comes to people better informed to make better decisions. We have over the many months since I've been here, we had a wide cross sections of people coming on this show from every aspect of life, with all different qualifications, grassroots qualifications, PhD qualifications, practical men and women. So I would say that they have come up our way. Yeah, hello, Lennox. Hello.
The show is not letting us speak.
Yes, Mr. Lennox is calling now. He said that they need to let him back in.
Oh, there he's back in.
Yeah, Mr. Lennox, huh?
Yeah, to your question, right? When I got cut off, when I had advised the
Are you seeing? I'm not seeing you all the time. Are you seeing me?
Yes, I can
I'm
see
seeing you, Joe.
Hey, my screen
Are you
went.
hearing me?
I'm hearing, but I'm not seeing anything. The screen just went blank.
Yeah. So what I'm saying, Joe, when I had advised the group that was filing the case, I took the same position that you took. I thought they were very close to power, and if anybody was able to push this initiative forward, it should have been led by the area representatives who had these large constituency that are grumbling in the background. And I felt if they, on both sides, UDP and PUP, and the third parties, if these representatives, I suggested once to them, why don't all you guys come together, bring out your residents, go to the National Assembly and protest, and effect change from within, because you guys are feeling that strain more than anyone else. But I think because of, at that time, I think the UDP was in power. I remember speaking directly to a representative from down south. But I think because they did not want to upset their party leadership on either side, they did not take that initiative to invoke that type of change. Because yes, they are feeling it from a financial standpoint, not being able to serve their constituency adequately. So maybe they should have taken the lead in this case. What we're dealing with, we have citizens who clearly are civic minded, they're vanguards of the Constitution that are taking this lead. But if the representatives who in their own right are fight to represent these people, then that would be something I think they should fight to as well, no?
Well, I agree. Yeah, I think I can't understand. Well, you gave a reason why to rationalize, while behind closed doors they might be voicing their objections, but while they are in the forum of the party forum, they are quiet. But I could understand those area representatives, which those very large numbers, especially in these sparsely areas, like in the rural areas, with the traveling, and reaching across is very difficult for them. Well, what I am not able to see any of you all. I don't know if it is from the studio there. Certainly, I don't think it's at my end, from my end. But you say you are seeing me clearly, right?
Yes, we can see you and hear you.
I am not seeing you at all. I'm not seeing her. I'm only hearing now. I guess it's from the studio there now.
Maybe. You are live on the screen though.
Yeah, that's strange, because if you all are seeing me and hearing me, but I'm hearing you all.
We're seeing you clearly.
Yeah, all I'm seeing is some lines, different color lines running down on the screen.
Oh no.
Yeah, I think it's in the studio, from the studio there. I don't know if they can get me back in.
That's not from the studio, Joe.
Uh-huh.
No, that's not from the studio.
CY, what's the update on Mr. Jeremy?
I'm waiting, Susan. I'm waiting. I'm telling him I'm trying to get his email now. Do it through the email. I'm waiting.
Okay. No
All right.
problem.
All right.
What do I do now? Because I mean, everything was all right a while ago, and then all of a sudden, I don't know.
Until the phone call came through.
I'll try and get in on
your cell phone. You might have to mute.
what is happening now?
Mute the live here.
Something is
Hello? Hello, hello?
Yes.
You hear me, Susan?
I can hear you. Yes.
We are experiencing technical difficulties, lady.
Yes, I figured.
I don't know why. Let me see if I get Jeremy right now, though.
We just have
They're
to
all
pray.
good.
All right.
Yeah, they're all good. Let me see.
I see why Mr. Jeremy said he's waiting to be let in.
I see him. I see him. Maybe I see him.
Okay.
I'm trying to get to him. Don't worry. I see him.
Mr. Coy, can you try to restart your camera?
Suzanne.
Yes, I'm here.
All right, so we cool. Let me see. Talk about what's happening. So what's happening with the with the union that you're talking about? That the thing you want to do in Belize? What you talking? Tell me what you're telling me.
Yeah, so the Maroon Council of Belize basically unifying Garifuna and Creole people in Belize to be able to um, have initiative like these where we are organizing and having maybe even like town hall meetings and mobilizing and coming up with common barriers that we can address with our area representatives and make things a little bit better, especially when it comes to the poverty in southern Belize. And so we are forming, Belize does not have a Maroon Council, and the hope for the Maroon Council is to be able to merge people who identify as Creole and Garifuna to be able to have that common, that
Yeah, I think
yeah,
it's needed. I think that was one of Jeremy would understand that too at some point, but I think that's what the things G Mike was trying to say. I think a unification is needed though. I
yeah,
think the split is too much, baby. I think the division is too much, and you could see it happening all over the place. And Jeremy, I'm glad Jeremy's here because Jeremy is one who is fighting for the unification still, and he's fighting these guys really hard. I mean, he's putting everything out there just to get these guys to understand what it's like. You know what I mean?
yes,
So and the Constitution play a big role in all of this. So now that we have Jeremy, I think Jeremy can explain more or less what it's about.
yes.
Jeremy, you can hear me?
Yes, yes, I hear you loud and clearly.
All right, my boy. Thanks, man. Sorry
Sorry
about this.
for the delays.
Sorry about the
I was having problems to connect. But
yeah, yeah. You
I
know,
will fill in
uh,
what's the question?
but before we go on, I just want you to know sometimes when we are doing things like this, that's when you get the intervention. You know what I mean? So but we got to fight through it, my brother. The question is not
Absolutely.
really a question; it's just a comment. But I'm saying we know what you're going through at this present moment, and we'd like for you to elaborate on that a little bit until Jose come back.
Okay. Yeah, thanks very much. Definitely, it's quite a struggle to be taking on these things, but
I know, boy. I
definitely
know.
somebody has to do it, and I'm glad that I'm able to do it.
I know, boy. I know.
Peter Gunu, Mr. Jeremy.
Betty Gunya, Suzanne, it's been a while.
Yes, yes.
Good to see you.
Yes, for sure, for sure.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Koye wanted to introduce you personally, so he's trying to reset his camera and log back in and stuff, but he definitely solidarity. He wants to be able to. He told me I want to introduce Jeremy personally, so
All right.
hopefully he can reset his computer and see what I can see if you can let him in the backstage too.
Okay.
Yeah, as soon as he comes on. But Jeremy,
Sure.
Jeremy is quite capable. He used to the show. He's been on here a couple of times. He know what's up. Yeah, we
Yeah,
just want to
yeah.
hear about how it's going so far, Jeremy, with your attempt. Because I see they bringing the big boy to fight against your boy.
It's a lot. Not just the big guys, but a lot of we're fighting against the government and all the resources that they're bringing very
Yes,
heavily.
yes,
But
yes.
I'm in it for the long haul. So it's an unjust
I
system. We got to
understand, brother.
challenge it.
I understand.
Yeah, yeah.
I understand, man.
As they say, the struggle goes on, no?
It
Yeah,
is.
but you could speak on it. I'm good right here, brother.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can go ahead and speak on it. Speak on it, Jeremy.
Okay, well, this situation began. I'm talking about the redistricting, and I have been writing about this since about 2010 to talk about the severe and widening gap between the electoral divisions, and it was showing like these a few families in the city were intent on deepening their hold on the whole country. And so what they do is keep their electoral divisions in the city very small and convenient for their purpose, while outside of the city, like Belize Rural South or Belmopan, which is the capital, or Stan Creek West, or even in some parts of the Cayo divisions, that they continue to have people growing number of electors in these constituencies. They keep these cities small so that they maintain it like a kind of a command center for the rest of the country. And what you have is the
No, but let me sweep this up. I can't leave the water there.
all of that.
I cannot leave the water there. Take the
What's
broom and
that?
sweep the water down.
I stopped. I was going to hit them up, but they was coming in with the ghosties.
See what? I think you need to mute your screen, please. Oh, there we go.
Okay, so that was the situation that I was very concerned about, and it was continuing over and over and worse and worse. So I decided to jump in and do my best to make sure that we find ways to correct this imbalance in our electoral divisions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's the situation in a nutshell. We've taken the government to court. Wednesday we had a long court session of the Supreme Court with a judge. Honduras is his name, Judge Honduras, and very rigorous, strong arguments on our side. And the government also presented a battery of attorneys, high-powered attorneys to counter our arguments. But I think the bottom line is that our arguments are very strong, and it's clear that the government consistently violating the Constitution. Wednesday, we're going to hear the final judgment.
Mr. Jeremy, I have a question.
Yeah.
With it being where the government is not the one who is paying or is advocating for the redistricting to happen, would this be considered an illegal election? And would it be like, say, personally, if a Garifuna or a Creole or a Mayan woman in Toledo and say, you know what, I don't feel, something doesn't feel right, and I don't want to partake in something that just doesn't seem constitutional to themselves, would this be like considered like an illegal election?
It is an unfair, unconstitutional, and illegal election, and the government knows it. That it's just because the people do not know it that it is allowed to happen over and over and over again. I'll tell you why it's illegal.
Mm-hmm.
The supreme law of the country, which is known as the Constitution, Section 90 states that each electoral or every electoral division should be nearly as or as equal as possible or nearly as equal as possible in numbers of persons eligible to vote. That
Mm.
is the law. So what we have is that in some electoral divisions, like Mesopotamia,
Mm-hmm.
is less than 2,500 registered or persons eligible to vote. To be eligible to vote, you have to register to vote. So you
Mm-hmm.
have 2,000, less than 2,500. In Stan Creek West, we have 10,500. You see that
Mm.
huge gap between an area like Mesopotamia or Fort George, which is about 2,500, which is like 5 times less the number as in Stan Creek West. So it is severely, severely imbalanced. So that these area representatives in Belize City could just walk around 1 square mile or so of their constituency. And in Stan Creek West, for example, the single area representative that has more than 10,000 eligible persons to vote, he has to walk Independence, Placencia, St. Bite, Hopkins, Georgetown, Mara Center, San Roman,
Mm.
Mullins River Village, Pomona, so many villages for this one man. And so the people are not adequately represented. And
Mr.
so
Enriquez, I have a question. How much, for example, for Stan Creek and Toledo, how much representative you have estimated that would be right number representative for these area particularly? I know Toledo have four.
Toledo
Uh,
has two
two.
ever
Oh,
since,
sorry, two.
and Stan Creek has two ever since.
So, what would be your recommendation? Would you recommend they have five, six? What would
We
be?
actually just have to look at the numbers, and we should each electoral division depend on what the average is showing. We have over 200,000 voters countrywide, and we divide by 31. The average number of voters for each constituency should be 6,600.
Okay.
Therefore, Stan Creek alone should have 3 area reps. The Toledo district, because of its unique geographical features where villages are stretched out far and wide, should also have 3. And Belize City, which has 10, actually should have about 5 or 6.
Mm.
So, but what we have is this small area with 10, which is severely, and in fact, 9 of the 10 are way under the 6,600 average. The only one that meets the balance in Belize City is Lake Independence, where the area representative Cordell Hyde is. That's the only one. Everything else, and especially Mesopotamia, Albert, Collet, and Fort George, are severe. You call it a severe malapportionment, which means they're severely under average. And so, any election called within that situation violates the Constitution, and it is illegal. And worse, we're subjecting the population to participate in an illegal act.
Mr. Jeremy, I have a couple questions.
Yes.
How do you feel? I'm a voter in a constituency that, based on what you guys deem is the right size, how do you feel infringing on that voter's right to select their representative within the specific time allotted by law? Do you feel like it's overreaching on the part of yourself and the other two persons bringing this case that is infringing on my rights as a voter of Lakai, who is prepared and ready to select my new representative or agree to support the present representative that is in front of me?
That's an excellent question. The right of one voter cannot infringe on the right of another voter, or that is the way democracy works. Well, your right ends where the other person's rights begin, so it cannot be infringing on the rights of others. Therefore, for example, the people of Stanford West has a right for fair representation, so that their vote has equal weight like those other constituencies, like every other constituency. That is a right that is provided by the Constitution. So if you see it as your right to vote in your constituency, that right as it is negates the rights of so many other constituencies, and therefore, if we have an election under those circumstances, it has to be deemed unconstitutional, and it is an illegal act.
My question is, I do not see the 6,000 voters of Danguiga or the 20,000 voters of PG on this petition. I see 3 voters who are attempting to disenfranchise others who just want to go out and select their representatives. And the reason I'm saying this is the Prime Minister has already dissolved the House. And because he has already dissolved the House, I'm from Caribbean Shore. I don't have a representative. And I want a representative in place within 30 days. Your actions and the other 2 people that stand along with you is putting me as a citizen at a disadvantage to have leadership advocate for me and for the needs of my constituency, because there's no representative in the House.
I could say, and it is well known that in a sense, even in a court of law, ignorance of the law is no excuse. Just because over the past almost 5 years, you're participating in a system that is deemed unconstitutional. This did not just happen. And as a matter of fact, the Prime Minister has admitted even before the last election, and he had also committed himself to correct this wrong in the severe imbalances in our electoral divisions. In fact, you will recall that in October 2020, just before the November election, the then leader of the opposition, who is now the Prime Minister, and the then candidate for Fort George, who is now the Minister of Constitutional Affairs, rushed to court to join the now opposition, the unity government administration at the time, to prevent the court from calling an injunction on an election at the time that was going to be called under the same circumstances. So when they got into office, over 5 years, they did not correct the same wrong that they said that they were going to correct. They found all kinds of legal maneuvers.
I agree with you, sir. I really do. But what I'm saying to you, what we're looking at right now, Parliament has been dissolved. If we have a state of emergency, if we have a catastrophic event takes place, we have no representative we can't pass no bills, we can't pass no laws. And this action at this time, in my mind, is putting the state in a very peculiar position. And if we look at any country, I did the research today. I could not find any country within the last 100 years that when Parliament was dissolved, the court told Parliament to reconstruct. That just doesn't happen in modern democracies. So I understand it's a cause, but I think it's a very dangerous cause.
Well,
to ask the Belizean people to wait anything outside of the 30 days for an election while the courts figure it out, and then if what you guys want, the government decides or the public officer decides it's going to take them 3 months, 6 months, a year to do redistricting, what happens to the governance of my state? We're asking for anarchy in my mind.
that's a very good question. You got to look at the series of events, and you'll have to look at the dishonesty and the trickery of government to maintain the system. Here is the series of events. Before elections were called, the Belize Peace Movement have been trying over the past few years to alert the government through the court system that there is something severely wrong with our electoral divisions. That was years before election was called, over and over from the past, at least from 2016. So this didn't just happen. So people need to open their eyes to see that the kinds of tricks that the government play to maintain the status quo, it confirms that they had no commitment to balance these electoral divisions. That's one. Secondly, even while this is going through the courts, the government knows that it has a responsibility to correct this system as they have promised. They have not done it. They blame the Elections and Boundaries Commission, which of course had a part in it, but there was absolutely no interest in doing that. Secondly, when I and the learned and esteemed attorney from Trinidad were going to take this to court, we notified the government ahead of time again that calling an election under these circumstances continues to violate the Constitution. So they knew ahead of time. This didn't just happen. So your argument that, oh, now see the government is taking this out, the carelessness and the trickery of the government. So when we indicated that we were going to take this to court, we wrote just before no elections was called, we sent letters to the Attorney General, we sent letters to the Speaker of the House, we sent letters to the Prime Minister, to the Governor General, to say, look, we are in a constitutional crisis. Elections are due in November. If you need more time, the Constitution provides us to spend another 2 months to have this rectified. What did the government do instead? They rushed to call, just when they heard we were going to have an injunction, they rushed to call an election. And now people are saying, well, why are you all doing this too late? We did not do this too late. It is the trickery and the lack of commitment of government to correct this situation.
Mr. Jeremy, I have a question. Could there be criminal charges? For example, if there were people who were appointed through the election and boundaries to follow through with the assignment of redistricting, and then they were getting a paycheck, but they never really was doing the job of such. could the Belizean people bring criminal charges against these representatives for maybe not doing the work but getting paid for the work?
Well, that's another bottleneck that we experience. It is the duty and responsibility of the Elections and Boundaries Commission to to abide by the Constitution and have the electoral divisions balanced. That is their duty. But the bottleneck is, and the Elections and Boundaries Commission is stated to be an independent body. In fact, that is what they ought to be. But from the get-go, it is not, because members of the Elections and Boundaries Commission are members of the opposition, the United Democratic Party, die-hard, staunch members. 2 members are from the People's United Party, die-hard PUP fanatics, and the chairperson, also appointed by the Prime Minister. The chairperson now is a member of the People's United Party. So you have both political parties who are not interested in balancing the system, who are city-centric, who are building a dynasty within the city to control the rest of the country. They are not interested, and therefore they have not done their job. They should be fired. They have no credibility, and they're one of the root causes of this whole mess that we're in.
But Mr. Enriquez, and I totally agree with the historical aspect. But I need for our viewers and.
But first, I want you to agree that we are still horribly.
No, we're in a quandary. We're in a quandary, sir. We have no legislators. We've effectively, how Belize works.
I understand that, but then you're neglecting what has happened.
No, one second. But we have to educate our audience. We have the legislators, we have the executive, and we have the judiciary. And when all these parts are in play, we have what is called a government. I'm saying to you, the Prime Minister of the country over and over announced that he will call elections before the end of this year.
As well as he announced he will fix the redistricting.
But I'm not into that. I'm saying to you, the Belizean people are or was expecting the Prime Minister to call the election at any time. When it happened down south and PUP won by that landslide, every reasonable Belizean knew or was expecting a snap election. I think the Prime Minister said, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to do that. We understood that election was coming. I'm saying to you no. As a citizen, the judges that you guys are expecting to rule on this case, God forbid something happens to these judges or the Chief Justice. Do you appreciate the fact that without a House of Representatives and a Senate, we can't appoint anybody in place? Do you understand that we are in a position whereby if we do not have, and the fear in my voice is, I lived in Latin America. I understand tyranny. I understand dictatorship. I'm not comfortable with an unduly executive in power for more than the 30 days that is allotted by law once the House is dissolved. I'm not comfortable with a judge or anybody telling me that Mr. Johnny Briceño or anybody should rule over my country without a mandate from the will of the people. And I don't think you guys are understanding the peculiar nature and the dangerous nature you're putting your people in. I would even go as far as to say, let's see what happens on nomination day. If the Belizean people feels so aggrieved about an election being called, let's see if the political parties can mobilize. Let's see if we have a reduction in the amount of representatives that will represent us. Let's see if the constituencies that you stated and the representatives that you stated are overworked because of their overpopulation, do not submit their name for elections. Then I can take your argument. But at this point, I'm saying to you guys, I would almost, for my nation, I would withdraw my position because you're putting the country in a very, very dangerous position.
I hear your argument, and I hear that you're also neglecting to see that over and over and over, if we continue along this path, as has happened, the situation has gotten to a constitutional crisis. The purpose of the Constitution is to protect people. This is a supreme law. That means no minister, no prime minister, no governor general is above the law. So what has happened? The prime minister knew from 2020, when he entered office, that we are in this crisis. He promised since then to fix this crisis. He has until November to fix the crisis, but he stubbornly refused. And when he knew this was going to court, he called an election. And here we have a citizen called Lennox Lamb, who is now crying that he cannot see these kinds of injustices that need to be corrected. And he's depending on a population, many of whom hardly know the Constitution, but that doesn't justify that the Constitution cannot be broken. That is a sacred pact that each member of the House of Representatives put their hand on the Bible to swear. So if they're swearing that this is what they're going to abide by, and then they totally ignore it, I mentioned, well, they might as well put their hand on an Anansi storybook. Because what results in that they come with all their tricks and refuse to abide. What God are they saying that they're going to honor by saying, so help me God? That is the problem. So I hear you. I want to say, I hear you about, and I know after elections are called, the House is dissolved, all of that. I know that. And I'm saying that strategy is used over and over to prevent the correction of this constitutional crisis. And so, again, I will hear people like Mr. Lennox Lamb evading this core issue of having one constituency with more than 10,000, another one 2,200. Then they're crying that, well, let's continue like this because we cannot imagine. Well, let me say, this is a novel case in the court. It has exposed the hypocrisy of the government, of both political parties, and there has to be a way to correct it.
So what better way to correct representatives who have sworn on the Bible to uphold the Constitution than for us to go to the elections and vote them out? No court can give us that type of remedy. So if that is because what we want when you're running a democracy or a country, what we want are leaders who uphold that position. So wouldn't it then be a better move for us to elect leadership who is going to protect the Constitution going forward.
It cannot be because
or for 1 second, or for us to, or for you guys to come up with a campaign to ensure that those type of leaders who did not respect the Constitution do not win again, versus taking away my franchise. I take it very, very seriously. That
But
the next individual thinks that they're going to take away my franchise and they're going to use a next branch of government to do so. I really and truly do not want to see the courts involved in my electoral process unless there are some major ills to a voter that impedes him or her from going to cast their votes. But outside of that, once that gun goes off, I want free and clear elections where people can go out and cast their vote. And what your group is attempting to do is to stop Belizean people from going and exercising their franchise. And I think history will not put you guys on the right side. That's just my opinion. That's not something other countries don't take it lightly like that. That's not, the gun has gone off. I sympathize. Like I said, I was a part of the initial group. I analyzed the initial, I understand everything you're saying, and I totally agree. But for whatever reason, it was not done. You please don't stop me from exercising my right.
That's a very, I think that's a very cagey way to put it, and it is inaccurate also. Just because you're thinking individually rather than collectively, fair means, and I give you the numbers. Fair means you have fair representation. You go to the election booth with the constitutional protection that you have fair representation in the House of Representatives. That fairness means, as defined by the Constitution, equal or near as equal number of electors in each constituency. That is the right that you should be thinking of. That's the right that each Belizean has, so that when one vote counts 5 times more than another, as in the case of Mesopotamia and Fort George, and in comparison to Stan Creek West and Belmopan and Belize Rural South, then that is not a fair election. That already invalidates the spirit of the Constitution. So if you're looking just at your vote and saying, my vote, it doesn't work like that. It is the collective national interest to say, we have, as the Constitution not suggests, say, shall, it mandates, and therefore we need to create that fairness. And when a government consistently ignores correcting that and go to election and promise people that they will correct it, then they get into power and they don't, and then they promise again, we have to call them to task. So we, in fact, are standing up on the right side as patriots to correct this from those who want to continue to maintain the status quo. So we cannot ignore the Constitution, Brother Lennox. We cannot. We
but
have
I'm not asking you to ignore. I'm saying to you.
So how can it be on the wrong side of history when we are trying to protect?
Because I'm saying to you, which of the franchises do you believe is more sacred to a regular John Brown citizen on the side of the street?
Free and fair election.
Good.
Fair.
So if I am allowed to go into an election within my constituency,
which is
John Brown, once again, John Brown is running and Jane is running, and there's nothing impeding me from voting for either of them, and I can make my selection without fear of persecution, without the stealing of my votes. I only have one vote in one constituency for any person that nominates themselves. And the government and the elections and boundaries makes that process fair, that I can select who I want. Isn't that what every single vote, isn't that what fair elections mean?
So let me ask you this question, then I'll turn the same question on you.
Mm-hmm.
Suppose you have, let us use that logic that you're saying. You have an electoral division, let us say with 1,000 registered electors within a constitution that says it is supposed to be equal or near as equal as possible. You have 1,000. And in another area, you have 20. In both cases, people can vote. So you have 1,000 and then you have 20,000. Would that be acceptable to you also?
Yes, guess why?
Would
I totally agree. That's acceptable. Guess why? I am electing one second. I am electing a legislator that will go in and pass laws so that my life can be better. I'm not into that. The problem is, if you elect Mr. Enriquez or you elect Mr. Lamb and he sits on his laurels and do not go into the House of Representatives and advocate for his 10 or his 200, he should be flagged. That is what we're electing. We are electing legislators. You guys we are misconstruing the role of representatives.
No.
They're elected by the people to go to Belmopan to advocate for your 10 or your 10,000. But if you will sit there and not take a law, not take a legislation to Belmopan within 5 years, I think that is a travesty. And that is a discussion we need to have.
I don't see where in the world what kind of democracy you're advocating for, even in the United States.
But what are you voting for?
I'm saying even in the United States, even in the United States and other countries, democracies around the world,
but what
they're
are we
redistricting. Their districts, their electoral districts, are mandated to be equal or near as equal as possible, and the international standard deviation at the max is 15%. That is the way.
I totally agree. I totally agree with you. But we are at the point where the people of Belize in 30 days should be considering selecting area representatives who will go and do their work. That's not what is in front of us. And when we look at the problems in our society, Mr. Enriquez, that is not the problem in our society. We have 31 representatives. And if we have 10% of them passing laws or taking laws to the House of Representatives, we are lucky within a 5-year period.
I know you're in a sense, we cannot wish away the spirit and the essence of the Constitution. It does not rely on personal commitment. It does not rely. This is drawn to protect a nation in its democracy from the kinds of tyranny in which one group seeks to establish control and violate the Constitution and subject the public into an election process that violates the Constitution. That is the core issue. Talking about one person going on working in a severely malapportioned constituency and trying to have that continue as it is, it cannot continue to happen. The problem is each political party played tricks and games to avoid the redistricting. Now, even the Prime Minister has agreed that redistricting needs to happen. He has said it over and over. But
It's necessary.
the
Hey guys,
difference is that
I
he
do.
did not do it. Yes.
Excuse me, real quick, Mr. Enriquez. We do have an engaging audience tonight,
Yes,
and
that's
I
right.
do want to read a couple of the comments for you. Mr. Nigel Petillo, when our rep don't act in our best interest, then this is the result. The people will and can be led by others not elected to act against these wrongdoings. Mr. Robert Lamb says, all games. Ms. Nunes says, this is an old game that politicians play. Also, Mr. Robert Lamb says, all talks. We could do nothing now. We're just posturing. We could talk all day. We're just socializing right now, but it's all love. Mr. Wilfred says, every right-thinking Belizean should be given support to Mr. Jeremy and his team. Mrs. D. Coy says, Mr. Jerry, isn't this not the appropriate time to file a lawsuit when it's voting time again? What if you all make your fight after the election instead of now? Mr. Tino Garcia, I am with redistricting. Here in Toledo and Stan Creek are unfairly represented. Let me read one more. Let me go up and get a different person. Miss Deidre Gillett. Good night. Off topic from the redistricting. How can we organize to fight what is going on in Hopkins with the mangrove getting cut down? And Miss Julia Young says good night to the panel.
Good. Thanks very much. Good. I like the comments, but there's one comment that says why it's not appropriate and why this time. I want to emphasize and repeat that this has not just started. It just coincided with our recent move that the Prime Minister, in a sense, tried to, call it in checkers game, huff. That means we were going to take this to court to prevent any election from happening without the redistricting, because it is subjecting, it is in a sense involving the population in participating in something that is illegal and unconstitutional. Secondly, this has been in court a long time ago. From 2016, this has been, so I want everybody to know this is not just happening. And then the United Democratic Party government at the time also were resisting the same thing. People have to look and find what is underneath those resistance. I think it is Belize city-centric folks are not looking at the well-being of the nation, and so they are evading and preventing the compliance to that part of the Constitution. So we continue to have this severe imbalance in the. So this is not just happening. We alerted the government from before elections were called to say, please, this is not right. Please do something about it. And instead of correcting it, they rushed to call election.
Mr. Rodriguez, can I ask you a question? Do you believe that as it relates to the work that legislators are hired to do after election in the House, in Parliament, do you believe that one representative has more rights or more powers than a next representative?
What I believe
in the execution of their duties as representatives, as legislators.
What I believe and what I comply with is that each representative should be voted in a constituency that is equal or nearly as equal in numbers of electors. That is what I believe. That is what this whole thing is about. To twist it, to find out, it is, again, there's a complete violation of the Constitution. So I will not go into all kinds of willy-nilly around the corner to find, to nullify or to dilute that strong point that this is the Constitution.
No, what I'm saying to you is I am very, my concern is, why are we letting off legislators off the hook when their responsibilities are their responsibilities, and every one of them are paid the same flat salary to go into the house and do work? They're not paid to patronize and pay for funeral and pay for christening and blah blah blah, and all of which is good because it's an old Belizean culture. But that's not what we pay them their salary for. And what you're saying to me, when the Speaker of the House calls for a vote, you're trying to tell me that the vote of my representative in Caribbean Shores is 10 times more than the vote of the man in Sand Creek West. And I would be disingenuous to tell the Belizean people that is the reality. So what are we fighting for?
I don't know. I can't understand why, if we could bring out the Constitution, I cannot understand in reality. Or if this is a case of just a case of denial. The Constitution is clear, my brother. I cannot see why there is any doubt.
But Mr. Reid, I'm not arguing.
Well, let me finish. I cannot understand why there is any dance around this solid fact that the persons who we elect, the assumption, not only the assumption, the commitment of the Constitution is that they're representing a balanced and fair number of electors across divisions. That is a hallmark of democracy. That means 10 persons here will have one, 10 persons here will have one, 10 or 10 to 12, the variation will have one. That is what is enshrined in the Constitution, for the reason that you cannot have one area with 10,000 and more and one with less than 2,500 as we have. That's a vast discrepancy. So they enter into election with that flaw and the violation of the Constitution. Then they go and swear on the Bible that we will abide.
Because I totally agree. But when I go in that ballot paper, I do not care about
because you're thinking about yourself rather than
I'm thinking about my Constitution. I'm thinking about my Constitution.
Yes, but not the well-being of the country. You are part of
it. You could ask Mike. I wish he was on. When there are certain bills being passed, do you know I write to my era rep? I call him and I tell him how I want him to vote. I cannot consider the rights of a next constituency.
That's where the problem is.
Let me finish. Who refuses to put his representative to task to go and legislate on the best interests of his constituency. That's all we are voting for come election day. You pick the best man to go and represent you. We're not picking a government. By extension of how our Constitution is written, the majority party takes governance. But you guys are mixing the hammer and the hammer to tell us that it's unconstitutional.
Isn't it?
And it's wrong for me. for me to select a representative. Nobody's denying the Belizean and people the right to select.
Okay.
No, if you select a representative and you feel the way you feel, the quickest and the fastest way for a solution is to send your representative into the House with the mandate. He can take a law. He can take the same kind of what the court is going to do is to instruct the legislator to pass a law for redistricting. I'm saying to you, the citizens, via the electoral process, can do the same. And I'm telling you, it's a faster path to solution. Either way, we at this point, or there, in este momento, we have no legislator. We have nothing. And I can't see how is it that it's so incomprehensible that to achieve the goal that you, me, and everybody want. Let's get this election over with and force our representatives to table this legislation. That's what we need to do. That's the advocacy we need to do.
Yes, I agree with you that that is what ought to have been done and has not been done over the past 15 to 20 years.
So you're saying the people of Belize did not care enough,
yes,
to force their people to do it.
The people of Belize, for whatever reason, all the organizations and all of that, have not been able to have this corrected because the status quo remains. But let me go back to some of the things.
So my question is, if we have,
let me go back to some of the things you say first, and then you could come out.
All right.
You mentioned you could go to your area representative and that you could state your position to that area representative, and he could take that to the House. What if there is an area representative? So you have that level of comfort and connection in a small constituency. I am saying the reason for the Constitution is that not many persons have those same kinds of access to their area representative. And therefore, that creates the kind of imbalance. That is why we have situations like in Hopkins, you have one area representative to cover Independence, Saint Bite, Ascensia, Hopkins, Maya Center, San Roman, Red Bank, so many, 16 communities, whereas in Belize City, within 1 square mile, that area representative covers his division. And so that is why the baseline that is established for our democracy first have equal or near as equal number of electors for the division. That's the base. That is the base. From there now, the second level is from there you select your area representatives with the mandate that they are representing a fair and equal number of electors. That is the base. That is the Constitution protecting Belize. It is the supreme law. Now, I hear you very strongly. You're saying that election is already called and we must move on. But I'm saying that we had initiated a lot to caution the government, to plead to the government, to plead to the Governor General, to plead to the Attorney General to say, listen, please let us you have until November, and you could even have an extra 3 months to correct this. The party could still win and most likely will win, but you will have a fairer and representation, a fair election, an election that will not be considered unconstitutional. It is not going to be considered imbalanced or illegal, which will be fair and free, and that is what we need to establish.
but
That's
I
why
would
in
say,
other democracies, every time there is a shifting in elect to have fair representation. That is all. That is the basis, the bottom line. So for people to think, well, me, my vote, we have to think of the intent of the Constitution to be able to protect all citizens of Belize, not only the privilege of those in Belize, but everyone.
Mr. Jeremy, I have a question. This I know that both political parties in Belize, the UDP and the PUP, I remember the PUP actually did the same thing as well and then called election. Do you think that the reason that why they're not doing the redistricting is because somebody is benefiting from the redistricting not happening? And also, what is the cost that if the government is to do a redistricting, right? What would be the cost? Is there any cost contributed to the government of Belize doing a redistricting, or would it just be pen to paper?
Okay, let me deal with the first one. Why both political parties consistently resist. Notice that both political parties have established like a dominant base in Belize City. It's easy to move around. Almost all of our prime ministers came from mal-apportioned areas in Belize City. They are severely malapportioned. That means they're under the average also. And it is easy for them to win over and over and over. Because they walk 1 square mile as opposed to somebody, let's say in Toledo, have to walk hundreds of miles, not walk literally, but visit hundreds just to cover their constituency. So that's a very imbalance. That's one. There is this strong, and I think there's a kind of a subtle racist undercurrent or class undercurrent. There's a new kind of new colonial thinking that we are the best ones of everybody, and so they gain benefits for their families and their class. That means they're perpetuating a class. So if you notice, the ministers from Belize City, their sons will go on scholarship to study law. Every time you will hardly see anybody from PG or Downgrade, or you might not even hardly have any attorneys from the South. And then they perpetuate a system, they will become the kind of elite. So they're pushing that and they're protecting that.
No,
Mr. So it's like
Enriquez,
a family dynasty. It's a
Mr.
family.
Enriquez, I have to jump in. I have to jump in. I think that is unfair.
Let me finish. There's like a family dynasty that is embedded. So the sons of previous prime ministers, the sons of previous ministers.
Nepotism. It's nepotism boldly.
And an oligarchy.
Yes.
And the second question about
Mr. Enriquez, that is unfair, man. You cannot impute a class war.
It's not a war. I'm just saying the fact. It's not a war.
You're imputing a class war and utilizing the Constitution, which protects the rights for everyone, because there's an assumption that some people are benefiting from political power when the Constitution speaks clearly. The reason why the Constitution says that we should have equal representation has nothing to do with the class war you're imputing.
It has something.
And that is why the argument is flawed. The motives are flawed. We cannot do that if we're trying to govern the society.
I think you're trying to twist
one has nothing to do with the other. What we're talking now, if you want to speak about that, we can say, okay, are we getting equal opportunities to make money? Are we getting equal opportunities? And we're not. But the way to do that is not to add 5 more politicians to the South so that their kids can benefit. That's not what the electoral process is about.
That's not what we're saying.
That's not what we're saying. No,
that's a travesty.
That's not what I'm saying. Lennox, I do not want you to get emotional to mischaracterize what I said. Let me say it again very clearly. The question was, why is there resistance by both political parties to follow the Constitution, to create fair numbers of electors per division? After observing, and she was asking, what is the benefit? Are there benefits that might be derived from that? And I'm saying, if we look at the trends, yes, there are, but we cannot try to override the Constitution and say, because this is what is happening. I do not want us to get into such emotional protection of the violation of the Constitution and then mischaracterize everything around it to try to dilute the importance of complying with the constitutional requirement that each electoral division should be equal or near as equal in the numbers of persons eligible to vote. That is the core point, and I've said over and over, because that has been neglected over years with each government administration, we decided before elections were called, before the election was called, to take it to court. The election was swiftly called while we were writing letters to the government. We were pleading, please, to every person, with Attorney General, the Governor General, the Prime Minister, to say, listen, please, there's severe malapportionment. You have some time to correct it. Otherwise, entering election with this severe malapportionment is violating the Constitution. That is the bottom line.
But, and I'll say this and I'll let Joe jump in. Mr. Enriquez, we have constitutional challenges on a weekly and monthly basis at the Supreme Court. We have Belizean citizens who challenge the Constitution, who fight for their rights via the courts for their constitutional rights. We have had amendments to the Constitution based on these challenges, but we have never had 3 citizens trying to hijack the franchise of every single Belizean who wants to cast their vote in fair elections in our. We have never had rampant corruption. We have never had any significant killing, slaughtering, stealing of the election results in our society. So our right to vote and right to cast a vote have never been impeded on in the history of our country. But what we're seeing is 3 individuals who are prepared to say, you can't go vote. You can't go vote right now because the man that stand quick, we want to win, no one get, or no one have enough to support the constituency. We don't vote. We don't vote for them to do that. We vote their legislators. We don't vote for these people.
I wonder if I could.
Anybody jump in, Joe?
Am I being heard?
Yeah, we're hearing you.
Yes, you can hear.
All right, I know we don't have much time left, but I'm sorry about all this. I had to go on and get my laptop. I didn't know it was a problem. Anyhow, I just wanted to have something to say before the show closes. I have no problem to give recognition to the importance of equal representation in the sense of numbers by divisions. I believe it makes good sense. And we need not argue the merits or demerits of it. I think it makes sense even to those who may not want to do it. My concerns about Section 19, and I believe it needs to be addressed in the reform, is somewhat ambiguous. And I'm saying it's ambiguous because, 1, It leaves it open to say that the Election and Boundaries Commission must make the proposals for the alignment of these divisions. And then it must go before, of course, the National Assembly. But then when it comes down to the decision as to whether the National Assembly is bound to support it, you cannot make a National Assembly do something that it doesn't want to do. I think that Mr. Barrow, yes, he's one of our legal luminaries. I have some serious differences with him. But he made a very good point. When the Caribbean Court of Justice had ruled that there were certain payments to be made, in a case, I think it was with Mr. Ashcroft, what Mr. Barrow said, and I agree with him, he said that he cannot make those payments unless he has the approval of the National Assembly, which is in fact the House of Representatives where the power is. So what he do simple, you take it to the National Assembly, to the House of Representatives first, and you have the majority, so you turn it down. Because the Parliament, you cannot instruct the Parliament as to how to vote. No, the Constitution does not allow it. No. Barrow indeed was able to use the ambiguity in the law, but it's not so much an ambiguity in that case, quite frankly. It is simply that he took it to the House, knowing that the House will turn it down. So the truth about it, he couldn't pay it. What happened? Ashcroft found another way around, and in the end, he was able to get his money. But let's use that example with what was used then. The same thing obtains in this case. We can all support the importance of this equal representation or equal numbers. But when you look at this section 90, you will see there when this thing goes to the House, once the Election and Boundaries Commission has put it to the House through the appropriate channels. But if the House decide that they will not support it, what do we do? There lies the ambiguity in it. How can you tell the let's begin with the House of Representatives. I keep saying the National Assembly, but let's begin with the House. You cannot mandate to the House that it must do it. And that is where I see the ambiguity in this piece of legislation. I support the idea that it's a very good concept. I thought it is good, but I believe the Constitution, to me, is somewhat ambiguous. Mr. Jeremy, I would like to hear your opinion on this. I know you have brought a distinguished Caribbean legal luminary, I must say, and it will be interesting to see how the case will pan out, because I don't know how you'll be able to tell the House of Representatives that they must do it. What is your opinion on that?
I followed you very closely with your point. The thing, though, I think with the example you used with Mr. Barrow and the payment and the mandate of the Constitution are two different things. When a government enters, when a new administration starts their term, they swear to abide by the Constitution. There is, in my view, no ambiguity in that part of in the Constitution to say that each division is supposed to be equal or near as equal as possible. So that is what the government ought to follow. That is stated, that is the Constitution. There's nothing to negotiate around that. It is how to make that happen. That is the law. Just like the Constitution protects human rights, there are preambles. Those are not negotiable. Those are rights embedded in the Constitution. Now to go to the House to vote on a payment, that is not a core constitutional matter.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's not a core constitutional matter as the other sections of the Constitution. It enshrines the rights of people as voters, as individuals, as whatever. That is a part of the Constitution. Those are non-negotiable. So you can't say, well, let us go vote if this right, for example, if we must withdraw these rights from people We won't follow this part of the law. Otherwise, what is the value of the Constitution if people decide they will nitpick and choose which one to follow, which one to vote on? The thing is, those foundations are laid. If I use your argument, let us say the House decide to vote that they will not call elections under 5 and they will just continue. That can't happen because the Constitution established those basic fundamental principles. So you can't pick and choose and say, what if a House, if I may use your example, what if the House of Representatives decide to vote? Well, let us not call elections and we will vote to expand for another 5 years. That is in clear violation, just as others.
Joe,
I'm using your example.
Joe, can I ask you a question on what?
Mr. Lennox, could I? Sorry.
No, Joe, let me ask you a question on what Mr.
No, could I just finish with the point I wanted to make? Because I'm sorry I wasn't on before. Let us not obscure the idea with using that case with Mr. Barrow, because I don't want to use it to obscure it. The point I want to make is this, that you can take the proposal. The election and boundaries can take the proposal. And I'm saying this, that the ambiguity will evidently come up in our courtroom, meaning that it goes to the House and the House says that, listen, it's not against, the equal.
Joe went again.
You're off, Mr. Jose.
Kicked it on the thing, which to me is where the ambiguity lies in the Constitution, meaning that it's not that they will not have to do it in the end, they will. But what they can do is find a way to defer it. And they defer it. One, they took it to the House. It went to the committee, the subcommittee at the House. And the two sides is opposing it. What is so unfortunate about it? It's very unfortunate. The two of them oppose it. So the two of them don't have any interest in putting it forward. Now, how does the Constitution will then enforce the House of Representatives to say that it must be done within a certain time? Maybe that is what the Constitution should be doing. The Constitution maybe will need to be amended to ensure that you cannot, it's not that they will not do it. They will always argue that it will be done, but it must be done based on the House supporting it. And if you find two sides of the House opposing it, all that they will have to do then is to go back to the drawing board. And that is how they are using it. And I'm not saying that is ethical, but it might not be unconstitutional, maybe not ethical. So to me, what I am seeing is that it will be a difficult case to take before the court and to expect that you will have a clear win, because the defendant will always be able to say, but we are not saying that we are not going to do it. We are simply saying that we need to review this matter more closely because the two sides seems not to be supporting what come forward. So we need to send it back.
Do I have a question for you? Based on Mr. Enriquez's position. Joe, historically, has any government called elections after the prescribed time in their history?
The answer is no.
None have ever done that.
Have any of them taken it all the way to the tape?
Yes.
No. We have never really taken it. If the tape means the months after the 5 years, remember you have a period after the end of the 5 years.
Just within the 5 years.
So actually, we can go to February for elections presently.
No, but the question I'm asking,
but nobody has ever gone that far. No, they have never gone beyond that 5 years.
Has anyone gone right to the line or close to the line in history?
Yeah, they have gone.
How did the voters of Belize treated that government to do that? What was the outcome of that election? Was it in favor of the government?
But I don't see anything wrong in going for the 5 years.
No, but I'm saying to you, how does the public feel? What was the public sentiment in that election?
I don't recall any negative sentiment. What the public has. What the public I can't recall, but what the public has resented in the past is to call elections too early, which they have a right to do. But again, that's the Constitution. But I just want to make my position absolutely clear. Whereas I consider it to be somewhat unethical to deliberately postponing something which I believe you should be doing. The question to me, is it unconstitutional to be unethical? Because that's what they could be doing. I think they could be characterized as being unethical. But is it unconstitutional? I believe that they have an obligation. I believe they have a moral obligation, a public morality obligation, not private morality. I think they have a public morality obligation to have already done it. That's what I believe. But I don't see it as unconstitutional.
Mr. Enriquez, I do want to ask you, thank you, Mr. Coy, for that. Mr. Enriquez, I do want to ask you about, let's talk about the money part of this redistricting. And I would think that it would be a bill that the Belize government would pay for, especially when it comes to the legal fees of redistricting. How much money is this process costing? Is there any fundraising? Is there any way a Belizean can, in the diaspora or in Belize, can say, hey, I think what you're doing is important. I do want to be able to have accurate representation. I feel like who is representing the area that I'm from doesn't really align with some of the cultural belief. How can I maybe give you $5 or $2 or $10 or contribute to the cost of this? And would the people be able to hold the government accountable and say, hey, we should be taking on this bill. We pay tax dollars money. Why isn't this money being used to pay for the redistricting or the legal fees, or even pay you for your expertise? How are you funding this?
You mean the case itself, or you mean how can government? What is the cost of redistricting? Is your question, right?
The legal fees, right, and who
For government to redistrict is your question.
The legal fees. I think we had mentioned earlier what it would cost to redistrict, or is there money to it, or is it just pen to paper? But I'm asking you now. I know that going to court is money. Is this a bill that the Belize government is paying? Is this a bill that is being grassroots or crowdfunding? If there is some sort of PayPal or Cash App that people in the diaspora can donate to, or help fund or jump on the mobilization of helping you to fund these fees, or for your time or your attorney's time.
Oh, for the case that we are currently taking to court, there's a GoFundMe site. I'll answer that question, then I'll go to something that Mr. Koye said. Yes, there's a GoFundMe site that we're raising funds to cover our costs, the costs of all our attorney assistants, the researchers, and all this, because this is a solid case that we're taking to court. So that's a GoFundMe site that you could see on various Facebook platforms. People are sharing it, trying to cover the cost that we're trying to raise to assist in this. But the interesting thing is our government is paying high-priced attorneys to go to court to fight against our clear demands that government should follow the Constitution. So you have top attorneys with big taxpayer dollars to fight against the people, is how I put it. So that's something that is very interesting to see. They find the money to fight against the compliance of the Constitution. There's this insistence by both political parties. I want to go to something that Mr. Koye said about it has to go to Parliament and Parliament has to vote. The Constitution, as it is a foundation for our democracy. There ain't no voting whether to comply or not. So you cannot say, and I use this example, what if both political parties says, well, let us not call elections until 8 years' time. We will reject any proposal to have it within 5 years. That is not how the democracy or our constitution works. These are foundation principles to follow. How you, the mechanisms to get that fulfilled is a different thing. So if the constitution is each electoral division should be near as the government should do all in its power to have that mandate of the constitution fulfilled. There's no trying to wiggle around it as they are doing. We're going to nitpick and see what part of the constitution to comply with. That is the supreme.
Mr. Enriquez, why do you think, and I should have asked this in the beginning, why do you think the writers of our constitution came up with that? What do you think is the spirit behind that?
Oh, that's a good question. In every democracy, that part of the constitution seem to be in Australia, in the United States.
But why do you think? Oh, Canada, I hear that. But why do you think our leaders did it? What was their vision? I hear what you're saying.
Their vision is just for what the basic principles of democracy, that people have a right to fair representation.
No, you're wrong. That is not what the spirit was about. Let me explain to you what it was about. The spirit was about, and that's why the United States has one of the most perfect democracies. And what the United States have, they have the aldermen, then they have their mayors, then they have their state representatives, and then they have their state houses, and then they have their senators, and then they have the representatives, and then they have their president. The idea behind that was to ensure that the people had their voices heard at the most basic level. So to achieve that
is fair. Yeah, that's fair.
I'm telling you what the spirit came from.
Yeah.
How we're looking at. So the truth of it means, if I come out of Halakte and I have the ability to elect the chairman of Halakte to represent me at that most basic level, I have a wonderful democracy, because there's only 300 of us in there and we can speak to power. And then when the 30 Halakte comes together, they can vote for a mayor. And
but Mr. Lennox,
but that's what
that's not how that's
Mr.
not
Lennox,
how the system
Mr.
works
Lennox,
in the area. The area,
Mr.
and
Lennox,
they have
I differ with you on that point? Let me tell you why I think. Let me tell you why I think the Constitution did what it did. Because it makes practical managerial common sense. It makes damn good sense, and I think you should do it. Would you like to belong to a group of 200 with a supervisor with the same resource than to the group with 2,000 with a supervisor with the same resource? Evidently not.
Yes.
So to me, if you have, just I can finish the idea. This is not a question, of too much theory. It's practical common sense in management.
But
I
Joe,
am saying to you, it's practical common sense. The Constitution make good sense when it goes to try to make it equal. And I think we should advocate for it, and we should. I support the group. No, quite frankly, I think it's something that I go there and create. But let's come back. I'm asking you the simple.
Joe, let me jump in and correct that. I hear you, but we're not electing managers. We're electing no, 1 second. We're electing legislators. Joe, we're electing legislators. We are electing people that will go into parliament, invoke laws to make the lives better for the people they represent. We're not voting for managers. Don't do that.
Mr. Lam, can you accept that you are a political and I am a political? I have 20 years of experience
as
an area representative. So when I speak from the practical standpoint, not from the scholarly political scientist standpoint, I'm speaking as the practitioner.
Yes.
And I believe it's good to have scholars with practitioners. But I don't think we should have scholars without practitioners. It's a practical common sense thing that why you should have those divisions be more or less equal. And we need not argue that.
No, I agree. Joe,
and I don't think any to be honest with you, not one member of this House of Representatives, not one of that 31 does not understand that it is necessary to do what this constitution is saying, because they could never argue otherwise. No, whatever motivates them to do what they are doing, all right, I will not question it. All I am saying, I believe indeed that they should have made every effort long ago to do what should be done. My concern, and I do support the advocates and the advocacy for what these gentlemen are doing, but what I would say this is that it's unfortunate that I see a loophole in Section 90, simply because they can always say that, no, we are not saying that we are not going to do it. We never did say that. We are simply saying that we need time to look at it more closely because we do not like the proposal come to us. And I believe that that ambiguity should be closed up. And I hope that in reform, I can never understand why anybody would not want to have that concept of equal among the 31 division, because it makes practical sense. And let me tell you why. Now, let me come back. Remember that the representative of a constituency primarily is responsible for making laws. And if you only use that in the theoretical sense, then they could have 10,000 in one division and only 100 in the other. But representation of our people goes beyond the making of laws. In societies like Belize, we have to deal with the reality of countries. So in Belize, if not other countries, more so in Belize, in a smaller country, more so it is important we have those equal amounts in our divisions.
I'm not saying that, but he cited, we look at the United States. They have what is called an electoral college, which portions your ability to select your president based on the amount of voters you have for electoral college. Has no basis on your population. And they're viewed as one of the hallmarks of democracy on that level. So what I'm saying to you guys, we cannot mix up the ham and the hammer.
But I understand. I understand the electoral college very good.
And so what?
And even
what
in the
about
electoral
that
college,
is democracy?
even in the electoral college, you can see the flaw. The point I am making. No, but the point I'm making.
But what we
not
Joe, my point is
there's a flaw in the electoral college, you will try to convince one that we should not want to have that equal numbers. No, I don't.
Good evening. I would like to inform you guys that we passed the time right now when we got overboard, but it's intriguing and it's an important conversation. So I think what we should do is reconvene, take a breather, and we could get back. Let's see. The election is scheduled for when? What date?
Anyhow, ladies and gentlemen, gentlemen and ladies.
You guys hear me?
It sounds very
I'm sorry.
But if CY, do you want to mute real quick? And Mr. Enriquez, I have one last thing before we do log off. Is CY, can you mute?
Hold on, I could mute.
Mr. Enriquez, are you still there with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Mr. Enriquez. Before you go tonight, this is very important to us that we all get passionate about what's happening, and everything is happening and changing so rapidly in Belize. I would like for you to close out with, if you can think about, especially people in the South, right? We're not favoring the South more than the North. But if you can think of a Mayan, Garifuna, East Indian, Mestizo citizens of Belize, what would be something that you want to let them know that would give them some sort of understanding of exactly this process that's going on, and why they are deserving of demanding that the government does this redistricting and continue the push, even if election happens and will happen. But even after election, what would you want to tell the people of Belize, of all ethnic group, that hey, this is something that is important, and this is something that they are deserving that happens now.
Very
Miss Nunes had also, let me read this real quick. Miss Nunes had also said, will this favor continue after election? So I would like for you to just give the people something that could say, you know what, I could stand with that even after election, and hold these people accountable, and that we do deserve redistricting and fair representation, especially people in the South who have, the proof is in the pudding. There's been systematic barriers, and there needs to be systematic change that happen. And so what would you like to leave the people
well.
with tonight?
First, let me answer sincere question of the Miss Renee Nunez, my cousin. The fervor started years ago, and it will continue. We're in this for the long haul until the government honors the Constitution for fair apportionment of electoral division. So this is not just for this time. We're continuing this. The Belize Peace Movement has been at this. I have supported the Belize Peace Movement. I've written about this so many times. I'm now in the action mode, and we'll push this as far as we can to make sure that this happens. So that's first thing. For the people of the South that you mentioned, in this discussion, I have seen, and I can see why, there is heavy resistance in trying to, in a sense, a cognitive dissonance against the principle of the Constitution that we've been going in circles over and over for like hour and a half or so with one of the members of the panel, finding all kinds of maneuverings rather than really committing to saying, listen, this has to happen. The government must be held accountable, and the Constitution is non-negotiable. It provides the framework for governments to follow. They could establish the procedures, the ways in which to follow and abide by the Constitution. And in this case, Section 90, it says each electoral division should be equal or nearly as equal as possible. However you find yourself to achieve that, that is the standard for our democracy to be fair and for electors not to be subjected in unconstitutional elections practices. That's one. So for the people of the South, for decades, it seems that their development has been marginalized by the inadequate representation that they've had. It cannot be that this one area representative, for example, in Stan Creek West, can effectively serve 10,500 registered voters, people eligible to vote, while in Mesopotamia and Fort George, there is 2,500 or less. That is vastly distorted. And let us look at it in financial terms. Each area representative is granted, I don't know if they call it subvention, but there is a vote that each area representative gets to manage their constituency. That amount is equal across the board, as far as I understand. I don't know the figure. I was trying to find it out, but there seem to be some ways in which government hides numbers. And I need to probe into that, even if we use the Freedom of Information Act. So let us say, for argument's sake, each area representative gets $200,000 to manage their constituency. Obviously, those in Fort George, Mesopotamia, Albert, all of these they're severely under average constituency. That money goes a longer way for those to benefit from. And you spread around that same $200,000, $100,000 among 10,000 voters. You can see already the vast discrepancy in that. I don't want the colleague of mine saying that it is because of that that we want to balance or to create the fair apportionment of electoral divisions. That is not what the Constitution, the hallmark on which all elected representatives put their hand on the Bible and swear, so help me God, to comply. That provides the basic standard by which our democracy is preserved. So they can't come and vote to nitpick and say, I want to abide by this, I don't want to abide by this. Well, we don't have time for this, and continue to see the past and severe in injustices and the severe imbalance in our electoral divisions. That is what we're taking to court. When the government fails, then we have to take the matter to court in order to consider and to make a judgment on. So it is a constitutional crisis we're facing, and the court needs to intervene in this because, and especially because, both political parties not correctly.
Thank you for that. We do have to close up, but I do want to lift about 3 comments from the chat before we do close out. Thank you for that, Mr. Enriquez. Let me say, Mr. Robert Lamb said, lift up our people. Mr. Nigel Petillo, he says, voters are being paid to vote a certain way. Many times politicians dictate and influence voters to do what the party wants, regardless of the implications. The politicians being playing these games. And we all know this. Mr. Yashua says that there is also an ambiguity in the terms redistricting. It should be redivided. Redivisioning. Guys, we did run over 12 minutes over our scheduled time, and we can possibly come back another time and maybe ask Mr. Enriquez to come back, and we definitely want to keep the momentum. Mr. Coy, do you have any closing thing before we close out?
Let me first say apologize for the technical problems I've been having, but I'd like to close on this note that I cannot see any viable argument putting forth by anyone to say that to have that sort of more or less equal numbers in a constituency not to be a very practical and important way of how this country is to be governed. So I wanted to make it absolutely clear that it's something that I think we ought to make sure get done. Now, I would like to see also that part of the Constitution 90 in this reform be revisited to ensure that that concept and that principle will be enforced and strengthened so that we do not have this happening again. But we must accept that you cannot continue to have the widening and the disparity, because then there could be no end to it, and that does not make for fair, equal, justable, equitable representation. So I do support that we should indeed get it done.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Lennox, do you have any closing?
You're muted.
First of all, I want to thank you guys for having me here tonight. I really enjoyed it. Ms. Enriquez, I'm with you. I was actually part of the initial move to get this thing done.
Thank you very much.
But the gun has gone off, and I truly believe that our franchise and our right to cast our votes is things that people have died over the world for. I have seen where people are denied the right to go to vote, not because we feel like one part of our Constitution is not being exercised, that we should take away one of the most fundamental rights from our people. And tyranny starts when we have leadership who are in power not because of the will of the people, but the will of special groups. Be it 3 people, be it the judge,
Let the masses decide on their leaders, and then let's hold our leaders accountable.
Or
Thank
be
you.
it the political parties, if you may add that too. Yes, thanks.
All right, guys. Thank you guys very much. And I want to tell you guys have a good night, and we'll do this again soon. And good night to the Belizean people. And Mr. Enriquez, thank you again for your time.
Thanks very much. It's been my pleasure to be here. Thank you to the next we invite you very much.
Propaganda, fake news, distort your views. Big man compromise their own values. Yes. Watch when we sing again. Breaking news, news breaking. All I believe is starting. Breaking news, news breaking. Poor people just keep on suffering. Breaking news, news breaking. Mama, please stop crying. Breaking news, news breaking. Scratching my head, contemplating. I am very elated that they find Kelvin, even though we don't get the full overstanding. And what about the rest of people them missing? Families still in a mourning. Psychological desensitizing. So when the real hit the fan, it won't be alarming. Breaking news is distracting. Then why we keep forgetting about McAfee and the shit eating, Mason, Pastor Lou beheading, all the gun smuggling, Chinese man them killing, passport duplicating, all the people under them keep on thieving. We need a solution for the gang banging. No fret, breaking news investigating. Breaking news, news breaking. All I believe is talking. Breaking news, news breaking. Most of it heart-wrenching. Breaking news, news breaking. Mama, please stop crying. Breaking news, news breaking. Scratching my head, contemplating. For years, we watch you no abuse, you no power. Most of things say we suffer from amnesia. Oppression, they pump for them agenda. You could tell by them aggressive nature. Cocaine is slip through the border, but for your weed seed, you get charged for murder. Forget about the threat from Guatemala. Like that, done on news, no money. Election time, clipboard and paper. Then they fight forget me Lee signature. Them say CT. My life will be better, but a promise is nothing but a fool's comforter. No retreat, no surrender. Divided we fall, we stronger together. Add fire to the flame and blow lava. Pan all of them politics stop. Breaking news, news breaking. The whole of Belize is talking. Breaking news, news breaking. Oh, people keep on suffering. Breaking news, news breaking. Hey, mama, please stop crying. Breaking news, news breaking. Got in my head, contemplating. $8 million to build one lease street. Well, Rasta, you can't find nothing to eat. Greediness to the devil with no heartbeat. You have to wake up and stop sleep. Living in a Babylon, nothing sweet. Teaching your window and you still can't see it. Lifestyle of the rich and the famous elite. They no sow nothing, the jewel and the reap.